Dear friends, I'm really delighted to welcome you to the Institut Français this evening. We are meeting not only to share a moment of reflection on commitment, but also to express our solidarity with the Ukrainian people. It's an honor to be giving the floor to Oleksandra Matviichuk, one of the most respected and courageous voices in defending Ukraine and the victims of war. Oleksandra, as you know, heads the Center for Civil Liberties, an Ukrainian organization committed to defending human rights and promoting democracy in Ukraine and the OSCE area. The center works through legislative action, citizen monitoring of institutions, educational programs, and international solidarity initiative. Since the Russian invasion in 2022, you co-founded the Tribunal for Putin initiative aimed at documenting war crimes according to the criteria of the International Criminal Court. Your commitments have been widely recognized. In 2016, you received the OSCE Democracy Defender Award for your exceptional contribution to the promotion of democracy and the defense of human rights. In 2017, you became the first woman to be selected for Stanford University Ukrainian Emerging Leaders Program. And in 2022, you were distinguished with the Right Livelihood Award, and your role was honored by the European Parliament's prize, Sakharov Prize. In the same year, your organization, the Center for Civil Liberties, received the Nobel Peace Prize. This evening, Oleksandra will be talking to Patrick Wintour, The Guardian's eminent diplomatic editor, well-known and our friend also, about your organization activities since the beginning of the large-scale aggression by Russia. The conversation will tackle major humanitarian and socio-political challenges Ukraine is facing today. These include the tragic deportation of Ukrainian children to Russia, the security guarantee essential for establishing a just and lasting peace, and the key role France and the UK can continue to play in supporting Ukraine. As you know, France is fully mobilized to secure a solid and durable peace in Ukraine that respects the Ukrainians and European security interests. It is closely cooperating with the UK to this end. I won't give, of course, an exhaustive list of the action of our two countries, from military backup to humanitarian aid, and to step up the pressure on Moscow through sanctions. The cooperation between UK and France clearly demonstrates our constant solidarity and commitment to Ukraine. During the French and British leader visit to the country on the 10th of May, in the company of their German and Polish counterparts, they repeated that the immediate priority was still to establish a full unconditional ceasefire, a commitment already accepted by Kiev and supported by all our partners. Now it's up to Russia to accept it without any condition or delaying tactics. This event is held in a spirit of solidarity and in partnership with Insurrect Ukraine, an innovative charity working to renovate homes damaged by the bombardments. I'm also very grateful to the Friends of the French Institute, who generously fund our Ukraine cycle. Their support enabled us to donate the ticket revenue to Insulate Ukraine, supporting its action on the ground. There will be also a fundraiser during this evening, so you can take part in scanning the QR code showed on the screen and be as generous as you can. Before we hear the inspiring conversation, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Oleksandra Matviichuk and Patrick Wintour for being there this evening and for agreeing to be part of our program, We Stand With Ukraine. My warm thanks to you also, the audience, for being so attentive and supportive. Your presence testifies the importance we will attach to Ukraine's situation. Thank you very much. And now it's up to you.
Well, good evening. I am Patrick Wintour from The Guardian, and one of the areas I write about is Iran. So excuse me if I feel or appear particularly shattered. But I know you know why you're here, and you don't really need any further introductions. But it just struck me reading her CV and biography. It's one of those shattering moments when you also realise that your own life has been largely pointless, futile in comparison with what she has achieved at a tender age. And I think also you're going to find out when she speaks with kind of moral clarity and a sonorous dignity, and always with humanity. And in this kind of world of kind of real, this age of impunity where everyone's competing the whole time to be heard, she manages to be heard because she has so much of importance to say. So the format is going to be she will speak for 10, 15 minutes, however long she wishes. I'll ask some questions which I've been dying to ask for months and months, and then I'll allow you to also ask some questions at the end. Thank you so much. Please.
Thank you very much for providing me a floor. It's a huge honor for me to address to this distinguished audience. I'm a human rights lawyer, and I'm documenting war crimes in this war which Russia has launched against Ukraine for 11 years already. While this war turns people into the numbers, what we are literally doing, we are returning people their names, because people are not numbers, and life of each person matters. When large-scale war started, we united our efforts with dozens of organizations from different regions. We built a national network of local documentators. We covered the whole country, including the occupied territories. And working together, we jointly documented more than 88,000 episodes of war crimes. 88,000, it's an enormous amount, but still just a tip of iceberg, because Russia uses war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russia tries to break people resistance and occupy the country by the tool which I call the intense pain on civilians. We are documenting not just violations of Geneva and Hague Conventions. We are documenting human pain. Let me share with you one story from our database. This is a story of 10-year-old boy Ilya from Mariupol. When Russians tried to siege the city, they didn't allow International Committee of Red Cross to open green corridors and to evacuate civilians. Hence, Ilya and his mother, like thousands other people in the city, had to hide in the basement of their building from Russian shelling. They melted snow to have water, and they made fires to cook at least some food. But when supplies ran out, they were forced to go out, and suddenly they appeared in the center of Russian shelling. Ilya's mother was hitting her head, and the boy's legs were torn. With the last strength, his mother took her son to the friend apartment. There was no medical assistance, because prior to this, Russians deliberately destroyed maternity hospital and entire medical infrastructure in Mariupol. So in this friend apartment, they just lay down on a couch and hugged each other. They were laying like this for several hours. And this 10-year-old boy told to my colleague how his mother died and got frozen right in his arms. As a human rights lawyer, I have a question. How we people who live in 21st century will defend the human beings, their lives, their freedom, and their human dignity? Can we rely on the law, or does just brutal force matter? The answer to this question is important not just for people in Ukraine, in Syria, in Myanmar, in Nicaragua or Venezuela. The answer to this question will define our common future. I work with victims affected by this war directly, so let me assure you that people in Ukraine want peace much more than anyone else. But peace doesn't come when a country which was invaded stopped fighting. That's not peace. That's occupation. An occupation is the same war, but just in another form. Occupation is not about changing one state flag to another. Occupation means enforced disappearances, torture, rapes, denial of your identity, forcible adoption of your own children, filtration camps, and mass graves. After 6 months of silence, Russia returned the body of my colleague, Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshchina. Her body had a visible signs of torture, but several internal organs were missing. Eyeballs, brain, and part of trachea. I know Victoria personally. She was young, talented, dedicated to journalist profession, and unbelievably brave. In summer 2023, she went to the occupied territories to write a piece about illegal practice of abduction, torture, and sexual abuse against civilians. And she disappeared. Now we know that she was herself illegally abducted, tortured, and secretly transferred to Russia, where they were kept in custody without any official charges in inhuman conditions. We also know that she didn't receive medical care, and according to her cellmates, she weighed just 30 kilograms. But we still have no idea how she died. Russians refused to return the body of Victoria Roshchina to her grieving parents. Russians still try to hide what they did to her. The first thing which Russia started to attack, starting this war, was truth. And the truth is that occupation doesn't decrease human suffering. Occupation just makes human suffering invisible. And that is why my colleague, Victoria Roshchina, risked her life just to tell the truth what Russia is doing with people in occupied territories. She believed that truth mattered. She was confident that it's her journalist duty to be there and to return a human dimension to political process, and with doing so, she can save a lot of human lives. Based on my own experience, I know that when you can't rely on the legal instruments and international system of peace and security, you can still rely on people. We get used to thinking through the categories of states and interstate organizations, but ordinary people have a much greater impact than they can even imagine. Ordinary people can change history. And I'm here to say that despite everything, the story of Ukraine, it's a life-affirming story, because these dramatic times raise hope. I would never wish anyone to go through our experience, but these traumatic times provide us an opportunity to express the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to make difficult but right choices, and to help each other. Because when we help each other, in this moment, we are acutely aware what does it mean to be human. And I'm here to say that we still have a chance. Our future is not just unclear, it's also not pre-written, which means that we still have a chance to fight for future which we want for us and for our children. Because hope, it's not a confidence that everything will be fine. Hope is a deep understanding that all our efforts have a huge meaning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was really extraordinary about ordinary people. Can I just ask, by starting, about ordinary life, as it were, in both occupied and unoccupied Ukraine? How do people exist? Because over the last, looking at occupied Ukraine, it's been now virtually a decade where children have been raised in a particular way by the Russian authorities. And I was wondering what sense you have of what those children are turning out to be, and also what level of resistance there still is in those regions. And then secondly, if you could just talk a little bit about the level of drone attacks and missile attacks that there's been in over the last just a week. Has been probably a higher level than there's ever been. And how do people conduct their ordinary lives, not knowing 1 minute to the next whether they're going to be attacked?
It's not an easy question, because what I understand when the large-scale war started, that you can have a lot of information what the war is about. You can follow the news, you can hear testimonies, you can see photo and video, but there is a huge difference between knowing some things and experiencing some things. And I still lack a proper and I still lack a proper words to describe what does it mean to live during the large-scale war. Because to live during the large-scale war means to live in total uncertainty. You can't plan not just your day, you can't plan your next several hours, you have no idea what will happen. To live during the large-scale war means to live in constant fear for your beloved ones, because there is no safe place anymore in Ukraine where you can hide from Russian rockets. To live during large-scale war means that when we go into bed, we have no guarantee that we will get up next morning, because the war is a lottery. And probably your residential building will be hit this night. And that's why I can share with you the personal story, how I started my morning today here in the beautiful London. I started my morning with checking the news and looking all my messengers. This is first which I and millions of people in Ukraine are doing every morning, just to check whether or not I still have a home to return, whether or not I still have family and colleagues alive. Because even if your city wasn't hit this night, it doesn't mean that another city wasn't hit this night. So it's very difficult to live during the large-scale war. And people in Ukraine they have different mood. I always tell that it's like contrast between up and down, because you can't get used to this unbelievable cruelty. You can't get used to this enormous human losses. But my colleague, Ukrainian writer, she invented one very strong image which I want to share with you. She told, when we are down, we are not down. We are in emotional trenches. We are here just to retreat, regroup, and to continue this fight for freedom and for human dignity.
I also wanted to ask you what is known by your organisation about the fate of the children who have been deported to Russia, and how do you actually get information? Is there any exchanges going on with the Russians about returning children to their families?
It's a very sensitive problem for Ukrainian society, because for every country, children is their future. And that is why Russia has stolen dozens of thousands of Ukrainian children in order to stall and to destroy our future. Ukrainian officials identified more than 20,000 Ukrainian children being deported. But I'm confident that it's just tip of iceberg. The humanitarian research lab in Yale University, which unfortunately stopped their work because of cut of funding from the new President Trump administration, they identified more than 30,000 Ukrainian children being deported to Russia. So we don't know the real numbers. What we know that it's a large-scale and systematic practice. And when we speak about the Ukrainian children who were deported, we speak about several categories. The first category is children from orphanages and other state institutions. Another category is children whose parents were killed by Russians, but they still have relatives who are trying to return them home. And third category is children whose parents were arrested by Russians. And the cynicism of situation is even these categories of children are supposed to be adopted by Russian families, having parents in Russian prisons. And the problem is that Russia ignores all provisions of international law and all decisions of international organizations, and that's why we can't return these children back. Plus, to this, Russian legislation provides an opportunity for Russian family to change the name of a child, the date of birth, the place of birth. So when we speak about small kids, like 2 or 3 years old, even when their parents will be released, their parents can't find them in the Russia, because children are very vulnerable to erosion of their identity. And these Ukrainian children are put in Russian re-education camps. They were told, you are not Ukrainian, you are Russian children. Your families, your relatives refused from you, and you will be adopted by Russian families who will bring you up as Russians. And that is why it's not just war crimes, it's something bigger. It's a part of genocidal policy of Russian state against Ukrainians. Putin openly says there is no Ukrainian nation, there is no Ukrainian language, there is no Ukrainian culture. For 11 years, we have been documenting how these words converted in horrible practice. When Russian troops physically exterminate active local people, mayors, journalists, children writers, musicians, priests, environmentalists, any active people of communities, how they ban Ukrainian language and culture, how they destroyed and robbed Ukrainian cultural heritage, and how they take Ukrainian children to bring them up as Russians. As a lawyer, I know that genocide is a crime of crimes. It's very difficult to prove it according to legal standards. But there is no necessity to be a lawyer to understand a common sense. If you want, partially or completely, to destroy some national group, there is no necessity to kill all representatives of this group. You can forcibly change their identity, and entire national group, sooner or later, will disappear.
As you said, you're a lawyer, but I think I've heard you already say on other occasions you're living in an age or a society where the law doesn't work. We have judges who either at the ICJ or the ICC issue warrants or provisional orders or other kinds of orders, and then very little happens on the ground. What is actually the chances of there being some form of justice at the end of this? In particular, I was interested in this idea of the crime of aggression, which has been discussed a lot in The Hague, as a big group that have been discussing it. And it just seems to me that the idea that Putin is ever going to appear in tribunal at the end of this, face the charges of crime of aggression, seems to be implausible. It would be one of the first things that would be jettisoned in a peace negotiation. Donald Trump didn't ensure that was the case. How do you keep going when you think this is going to be, as you say, the law doesn't work?
Let me share with you one personal story. Since the large-scale war started from 21st of February 2022, I found myself in a very weird situation. Because when someone asked me how we can protect human rights and freedoms of people in occupied territories, I had to answer, give Ukraine weapons. Give Ukraine weapons. This is not something which you expected to hear from human rights lawyer, right? But I can't wave Geneva or Hague conventions in the front of Russian tank. Russian tank will not stop. And I want not just to document Russian war crimes, I want to stop it. In 2022, UN Court of Justice issued preliminary decision and obliged Russia immediately withdraw their troops from Ukraine. And Russia ignored even the decision of UN Court of Justice. We really have no legal tools how to stop Russian atrocities. And Russians killed unarmed. Probably you remember this horrible photos and videos from Bucha. I was in Kiev when Russian troops tried to circle my city. I refused to evacuate, and with a part of my team, we continued our work on the ground. And that is why when Bucha, Matizhin, Irpin, Vorzel were released and Russian army were pushed from these territories, we immediately sent mobile groups. And we were shocked. We found dead bodies of people. Their bodies lay straight around the streets until liberation. We found dead bodies of people in the gardens of their own households. We found dead bodies of people, men and women, with a hand tied under their backs in mass graves, with a horrible sign of tortures. We found dead bodies of people, the whole families with children, in civilian cars. They were deliberately shot while they just tried to escape from the dangerous zone. These people were unarmed. This is what Russians are doing with unarmed people. So, yes, I very often repeat that now we're in a situation when the law doesn't work. But I do believe that it's temporary. It's not first time in humankind history when the law doesn't work. So that's why we have to be prepared for the next stage. Now I return into your question about aggression. If we want to prevent wars in the future, we have to punish the states and their leaders who start such wars in present. It's a common sense. But in the whole history of humankind, we have only one such precedent. It was Nuremberg trial. All other tribunals, which you probably heard, like Rwanda Tribunal, Yugoslavia Tribunal, or Special Court in Sierra Leone, I will simplify it, but it were a court where people were tried because they killed each other not according to the norms. So if they killed each other according to the norms, they will not be prosecuted. And what is Nuremberg trial is about? It was victorious trial. It was trial where Nazi war criminals were tried only after Nazi regime had collapsed. And last century, it was an essential step to establish law and justice. But it's also marked one important thesis. Justice is a privilege to winners. But we live in a new century. We must move further. We must move further this legal standard. We must make justice independent on the fact when and how the war will end. We cannot wait. We must establish a special tribunal on aggression now and hold Putin, Lukashenko, and top political leadership and high military command of the Russian state accountable, because all atrocities which we are documenting, it's result of their leadership decision to start this war. And I'm glad to announce that a month ago, approximately 40 countries in the world, together with France, together with United Kingdom, they issued a very important political statement that they are starting the process of creation of special tribunal on aggression.
I hope this isn't too political, but it seems to me that self-evidently what matters is how America is going to treat Ukraine in the future. And there's been a terrible falling out, some kind of reconciliation of sorts, partly engineered by the British and by even by the King Charles, who you saw yesterday. But I was wondering, you've been to America quite a bit. How do you feel the American mood is about Ukraine? There's a very kind of MAGA view about it in the White House. But is the view different in Congress, in the Senate, and in American public opinion?
Recent months, we heard a lot about natural minerals, Russia's territorial claims, geopolitical interests, even about Zelensky's suit. But we didn't hear about people. And it's not okay. We have to find the complex answers to the complex questions. What will be with more than 20,000 Ukrainian children illegally deported to Russia? What will be with thousands and thousands illegally detained civilians, men and women, as well as prisoners of the war, subjected to horrible torture and sexual abuse daily? I personally interviewed hundreds of them. They told me how they were beaten, raped, smashed into wooden boxes. Their fingers were cut, their nails were torn away, their nails were drilled. They were electrically shocked through the genitalia. One young girl told me how she was forced to write with her own blood. Another woman told me how her eye was dug out with a spoon. Knowing these details, you have a clear understanding that part of these people have no chance to be alive till the end of this peace talks. What will be with people in occupation in general? We speak about millions. These people live in gray zone. They have no tools how to defend their rights, their freedom, their property, their lives, their children, their beloved ones. What will be with 1,600,000 Ukrainian children who live under Russian occupation? Russians erode their identity. Russians militarize these children. In the age of 18, they will be forced to join Russian army. Russia is preparing a new generation of Putin's soldiers who has to go and fight and die in every country which Russia sent them to go to find and to die. So we have to find the answers to these questions, and in order to do this, we have to return human dimension into political process. And I was quite often in the United States, in different parts of the country. And I always faced very warm welcome. I spoke with different audience, with politicians, with business community, with IT people, with religious community. They all understand what this war is about. According to social survey, the majority of people in the United States support our fight for freedom and for human dignity. I hope that in order to achieve peace, the United States administration will demonstrate strength. Because strength, this is the only language which Putin understands. I hope that we will see a change of policy because of the will of American people.
My last question, which is that I asked a friend of mine when because I told him I was doing this, and he knows Ukraine way better than me, and this is what he said I should ask you. And I hope you don't find it rude. He said the fascinating thing about her is that she predates all this and will hopefully outlive it work-wise. No one else knows better than her about how Ukraine did not go from repression and corruption to a human rights haven just because it was invaded. And I guess he was saying, how concerned are you that however this ends, that Ukraine will have changed permanently, and that it won't revert to the kind of oligarchy and corruption that obviously disfigured the country before?
This war has a very vivid value dimension, because this is not just a war between two states. This is a war between two systems, authoritarianism and democracy. This war started not in February 2022, but in February 2014, when Ukraine got a chance for the quick democratic transition after the collapse of the authoritarian regime due to Revolution of Dignity. It was time when millions of Ukrainians stood up their voice against pro-Russian government who stopped the Euro-integration process. And they came to the streets across the country and peacefully demonstrated. They fought just for a chance to build the country where the rights of everybody are protected, government is accountable, judiciary is independent, and police do not beat students who are peacefully demonstrating. And we paid a high price just for this chance, because pro-Russian corrupt authoritarian Yanukovych government started large-scale systematic repressions against peaceful protests. I was coordinator of civil initiative Euromaidan SOS at that time. We brought up several thousands of people to provide legal and other assistance to persecuted protesters. We worked 24 hours per day all this period, and every day hundreds and hundreds of people who were beaten, arrested, tortured, accused in fabricated criminal cases passed through our care. At the end of Revolution of Dignity, Yanukovych police gunning down more than 100 unarmed protesters just in the center of Kyiv. People were dying under flag of Ukraine and under EU flag. So when we got a chance for the democratic transition, when our pro-Russian president escaped to Russia, in order to stop us on this way, Russia invaded. Russia occupied Crimea, part of the eastern regions in 2014, and in 2022 extended this war to the large-scale invasion. And one important fact I want you to remember, in 2014, Ukraine was a neutral country. The neutral status was written in our constitution. And Putin is not afraid of NATO. Putin invaded our country because he was afraid of idea of freedom, which came closer to Russian borders. So we have just 11 years for democratic transition. And all countries who make this jump, they know how difficult it is to make transition and to build sustainable democratic institutions even during the peaceful time. It takes decades. We have just 11 years, and we have to do it not during the peaceful times. We have to do it during the time of war. And war has its own logic, and this logic is opposite to the logic of democratization. Because logic of the war dictates that you have to limit human rights and freedoms due to security requirements. For example, we have curfew. Logic of democratization dictates opposite. You have to expose the space of human rights and freedoms. Logic of the war dictates centralization. Logic of democratization dictates decentralization. So it's different to logic, cardinally difficult. And we have to balance between these two logic because we have no luxury to postpone the task after the post-war period. We have to do both tasks parallel, to defend our country, our people, and our democratic choice, and second, to implement our democratic choice, to conduct reform, and to continue this path to Euro-integration. It's not easy, frankly speaking, and we're still nation in transit, but we are on the right way. And we are very sincere in our goal to return to European civilized dimension. It's not just words. We prove it by the cost of our lives.
Well, I'd just like to thank the organisers for giving me the privilege of asking those questions, and honestly it was it's an honour of my life to have done so. And now you have got the honour of asking some questions, and I don't know in what format we're going to do this, but the roving mics or people going to shout, whatever. This mic's great. And then if people just put their hands up, there's two over there and there's one down here. And should we take three? Would that be good? Try to also make them a question.
I'll try not to make a speech. Thank you so much. Just extraordinary, but horrifying. And when I consider Putin, who happily poisons people in every country, including his own political enemies, and murders his allies in a whole variety of different ways, I see very little hope in the current situation. Could you imagine that you were Secretary General of the United Nations and tell us what you would do if you were?
So is there a question behind?
A lot of Russia's strategy is being based around creating misinformation in social media and in the news media, particularly in the West. What can Ukraine, with all its innovation, its technical ability, do to neutralize this wave of lies that comes out of Russia?
And I think there's one more question up here, down here.
Thank you, Oleksandra. That was a very moving incisive and illuminating, tragic speech. I am going to make a little speech because I've been privileged to lecture to Ukrainian students by Zoom in Ukrainian universities. And I asked them to give me their voices, and the majority of them sent me visual poems in the shape of a tank. And I saw their faces on Zoom of a traumatized generation. Now, we have different reactions to this situation in 1942 and today. We have shock and horror, we have witnessing, but we also have planning for the future. Now, what you describe is not genocide, it's ethnocide. It's the second big case of ethnocide in the past 100 years. They are not trying to kill a people, they are trying to kill a people and eradicate its culture. That's what ethnocide means. And it's far more horrendous than anything we can imagine. Now, my question to you. In 1942, 1943, Lauterpacht in London and Cambridge, Lemkin in Washington, and Kelsen in various American universities, and several inhabitants of the camps in Auschwitz, in Belsen, and my father in Auschwitz too, formed an invisible community that decided not just to bear witness, but how they would create a new world order. And they did that in 2 years, from 1945 to 1947. What are your thoughts on the new world order?
Thank you very much for these questions. I will try to answer. Starting from the first, I don't know how historians in future will call this historical period, but we happen to live in very turbulent times. The world order, which is based on UN Charter and international law, is collapsing before our eyes. This UN system of peace and security was established after the Second World War by victorious states, and these victorious states ingrained for themselves in the architecture irrational privileges. This UN system of peace and security coped more or less good with global challenges before, but now we're just stalling and reproducing ritualistic movements. The work of Security Council is paralyzed. And now it's very easy to predict that such fires like wars will emerge more and more often in different parts of the globe, because the whole international wiring is faulty and sparks are everywhere. And I believe, and I'm sorry to say so, that the current international order is collapsed and we can't return to the status quo. Because human life is short, probably till the end of my life I will be witnessing these ritualistic movements, but what we have for current moment, we have the struggle for the new world order. Let me explain this with Ukrainian example. I live in Kiev, and my native city constantly being shelled, not just by Russian rockets, but also by Iranian drones. China helps Russia to circumvent sanctions and import technologies critical to warfare. North Korea sent to Russia more than 1 million artillery shells and regularly sent their troops to Russia. All these regimes have something in common. All these regimes that have captured power in their own countries have the same idea what a human being is. They see people as an object to be controlled. They denied them in rights and freedoms. Democracies, with all problems which we have, even not being ideal, they put people, their rights and freedoms as a priority for their policy. And there is no way to negotiate it, because the very existence of free world always provides threats for dictators to lose their power. And that is why, for China, for Iran, for North Korea, Ukraine is not a goal. Ukraine just a tool how to break the world order completely and replace it with their own vision. And it's nothing new in their vision. Their vision is very simple. It's a rule of force. It's a world of strongest. And we saw it before. It's a very dangerous world, where just several countries dictate the rules of the game and other countries have to obey them. It's a world where human life has no meaning. And it's a world which is difficult even for strongest, because to be strongest is a process. You have to always confirm that you are strong and that you are in the top of this hierarchy. And that is why the world where rule of force is dominant, it's always the world of wars and world of mass violence. And they are driving us to this scenario. We are dealing with the formation of entire authoritarian bloc. They definitely know what they want to achieve. In January 2022, Putin came to China to meet Xi Jinping, and they published a manifest about New World Order. And just after 3 weeks, Putin started large-scale war to fulfill this New World Order into force. And that is why it's not just Ukrainian problem that in 21st century, a country decided that when you have a strong military potential and nuclear weapon, you can break world order, you can dictate its rules to entire international community, and even forcibly changed internationally recognized borders. I will remind you that last time when this very principle of international law, like non-use of violence, respect to state sovereignty, and inviolability of state borders were violated, the Second World War started. So if I be the Secretary General of United Nations, I will start a cardinal reform of this system, because it's not working properly. It can't defend people against authoritarianism and the wars. And before, it was visible just for people in Iran, in Syria, in Myanmar, in Sudan, in Afghanistan, but now it's visible even for people who enjoyed their freedom and their security for decades, that they live in illusion, that they have international system that will protect them. The system has gone. And your security, your human rights guarantees now depend whether or not you have enough people in your countries which are ready to rescue their lives for security and freedom of others. Putin started this large-scale war not because he wanted to occupy just more part of Ukrainian land. Putin started this large-scale war not for Avdiivka or Bakhmut. I will make a small experiment. Please raise your hand. Those people who know where Avdiivka and Bakhmut are in the map. I am impressed. Almost half of people here know, because you follow the news. It's important Ukrainian cities, Avdiivka and Bakhmut, for Ukrainians. But it's not London, it's not Rome, it's not Berlin, it's not Geneva, it's not Washington. It's very naive to think that Putin started large-scale war just to legitimize the occupation of Avdiivka and Bakhmut. His goal is different. He started large-scale war because he wanted to occupy and destroy the whole country and move further. He sees Ukraine as a bridge to Europe. He dreams about his legacy. His logic is historical. He wants to forcibly restore Russian empire. It is his words that borders of Russia has never ends. This means that people in European countries are safe only because Ukrainians are still fighting. And this is not just me who tell this. 6 days ago, here in London was a Secretary General of NATO, and he told that according NATO predictions, European countries have up to 5 years before Russia attacks them. Just 2 days ago, the head of German security service told that they have a lot of evidence that Russia is preparing for this attack. So it's not just Ukrainian problem. The result of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine will define the scenario, how this new world order will be developed. And the last question which I want to answer is about misinformation. I know that people start to understand that the war is going on only when the bombs fall on their heads. But war has not just military, but other dimension and informational dimension as well. This is dimension where the battle is going for your hearts and minds. And Russia invested billions of euro to create a very strong informational infrastructure across the globe. We are very vulnerable living in the post-information era. We spend a lot of time in digital reality, but this reality is polluted with fakes, disinformation, and propaganda. And people start to lose their ability to make distinction between lie and truth. They become very vulnerable to external manipulation. Because how we see the world, it's define our decisions and our actions. And when we see the false picture of reality, we have the wrong decisions and wrong actions. Now we have a situation when even people in small community, they have no more shared sense of reality. But without joint shared sense of reality, they're unable to do common actions. Without common actions, they can lose their democracy and their freedom. And unfortunately, there is no recipe to it. I wish I know the answer. I think that the people who will develop how to contradict this disinformation and manipulation will receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Probably it will be someone from this audience, I don't know. But I know for sure that we have to protect truth, because truth matters. Facts matters. And as I mentioned, there are people like my colleague, Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshina, who sacrificed her life for these values.
Look, thank you so much. I don't know whether I leave inspired or demoralized, but I feel the answer to disinformation is sitting to my right, which is you. And the truth of which you speak is truly inspiring. And perhaps we now should start a write-in campaign for the next Secretary General of the United Nations. Again, she's sitting to my right. Thank you so much.
I just want to show you one important book for me personally, which I want to present our beautiful moderator. This is a book of another my friend, Ukrainian writer Victoria Amelina. We was together in London in June 2022, speaking to British Parliament about Special Tribunal on Aggression. So London is an important city for us both. She wrote a book about Ukrainian women in the war, and this book shows this value difference between Russian world and Ukraine, because in Ukraine, women joined armed forces, women coordinate civil initiatives, women document war crimes, women on the forefront of this battle for freedom and democracy, because bravery has no gender. But in Russian world, women has to play just assigned roles for them in families and societies, and this is a basis for authoritarian regime, because how regime treat people, how people behavior to each other reflect how governments behavior towards its own people. So it's a very good book, but it's unfinished, because my friend was killed by a Russian rocket in Kramatorsk during her field mission to the east to document war crimes. But still, I know that it's very important to read this book. Even, I will tell you honestly, I can't, because it's still difficult for me. But I highly popularize this book among this audience, and I will be glad to present it to you.